I'm scared that when we come out of here, the devastation and the loss of lives would be great. So I'm just scared for my people.
This is San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz, hours before Hurricane Maria would make landfall on the eastern tip of Puerto Rico. That night, as I was barricaded in a hotel with staff and stranded tourists, the storm raged above, shredding the island's electrical grid and cutting power to the entire island. It was the strongest storm to hit the island in nearly a century. When Maria left, dazed Puerto Ricans emerged to find flooded streets and destruction in every direction. They had no power, no phones, no water. We're in downtown San Juan right now, and this is what it looks like. 50% of these streets were flooded, and for many residents, it means wading through water just to get home. What's it been like? Stunned and waiting for government aid, they looked to each other for help.
We're not just at home sitting, waiting for something to happen, for the government to do something for us. We're actually see that we could do something, and we're trying to help.
But for an island already suffering from more than $70 billion in debt and an exodus to the U.S. mainland, many fear this storm will have devastating consequences for decades to come. A month after the storm, I returned to see how the island was recovering. During that time, Fema had arrived, but mounting criticism of its response was setting up a debate about how much the US government felt obligated to spend on recovery. President Trump had also visited, setting off a firestorm over his tweets and public statements.
We've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. When you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina,
today, much of the island is still without power, including large swaths of the capital, San Juan. Many still have no access to drinking water and struggle with ongoing fuel and food shortages. We enter a community to the west called Barrio Playa Añasco. Local authorities are still working to remove large piles of trash and debris. We find a man who calls himself Pipo de la Revelación, or Pipo of the Revelations. He lives in a small compound with his wife and adopted daughter, along with members of his extended family.
Oh, wow. Así hice yo. Y esperando que pasara todo.
2 días.
2 días. Yo decidí mandar a mi esposa y a la nena para Mayagüez y me quedé aquí con la peja. Para salvarle la vida a la peja. La nena mía, que es lo más que yo quiero, no tiene nada. Yo lloro.
You're saying the government income.
No le vimos la cara, ni cuando empezó ni a terminar esto. Nada, 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 nada. Y yo con la pejita aquí así.
Right now we're in Añasco. This is one of the hardest hit areas here in Puerto Rico, and as you can see over my shoulder, the Red Cross is distributing food and water for the residents who are gathered here. As a tropical island, Puerto Rico depends heavily on tourism to support its 3.5 million residents. Though all American citizens, most earn much less than their mainland counterparts. A month after the storm, and residents say this is only the second time any organized relief has come to their town. On the eastern tip of the island, where the hurricane made landfall, the damage is astonishing. A man goes about his day, his house collapsed all around him. Power lines, electrical towers, trees, and buildings lie in every direction. So we just arrived in Canóvanas, and every single place you look, you either see down power lines, homes that are completely demolished, or homes that are simply not even there anymore. We also know that there are some cases of leptospirosis and hepatitis here. Locals tell us this is where they got their drinking water in the weeks after the storm. It smelled of sewage and rotten eggs. We know that in the absence of having any clean drinking water, people across Puerto Rico were digging wells, but we don't even know where this water is coming from. They tell us that people just simply came here to fill up water and left with it. Despite all the damage, the primary concern is still basic necessities like drinking water. Oscar Carrion turned his restaurant into a makeshift shelter for families that lost their homes.
Yo vivo aquí, siempre estoy pendiente a los vecinos, esas cositas así, pero aquí hace falta mucha, por lo menos agua potable, mucha necesidad. Si pueden ver ahora mismo, llega una persona con una ayudita y todo el mundo trata de llegar a participar, porque no se llega, hay muchas lomas, muchas casas que no se enteran ni lo que están dando ayuda que necesitan. Lo voy a hablar con los demás. Vivir aquí.
How do you feel, man?
Que la ayuda es un poco limitada, demasiado, hay mucha necesidad.
Driving around this neighborhood, it looks like the hurricane happened yesterday.
Exactly. This is not moving anywhere. I mean, it's very slow. So that's kind of, we're desperate for that. So this is kind of the way through social media they can see the reality of what's going on. Sometimes in the news you don't get everything, you don't get all stories. So.
And what's the reality? How would you describe what's happening?
People in need, people hungry, people that lost everything, house and half even clothes, nothing to feed their kids. Water, even for us in the city, it's hard to get water.
Puerto Rico is fundamentally different than Houston after Harvey, Florida after Irma, or even New Orleans after Katrina. The federal response was shrouded in criticism from the start, with widespread evidence that families were not having even their most basic needs met. For many, the colonial nature of the federal government's relationship with Puerto Rico came into laser focus and became a dark cloud hanging over the aftermath of the storm. Unions and NGOs were consistent in their assessment that the feds were failing. Some even said that the situation amounted to a violation of basic human rights. We know that there have been cases of leptospirosis here. Some say that there's hepatitis here because of the water. Have you seen any of that? Do you know anybody who's sick with leptospirosis?
Sí, he conocido de la comunidad. La cuñada de ella murió hace poquito, hace como 2 semanas. Unos dominicanos que me enteré aquí todavía pero que murieron por eso, pero que los mandaron para su país.
Have you gotten a lot of help from Fema or from the government? Have you seen Fema in your neighborhood helping people here out, like these volunteers?
Para mi opinión, están limitando a las personas, como que haciéndose lo más difícil a las personas. Porque antes, Hortensia vinieron por ahí, casa por casa.
At FEMA headquarters in San Juan, officials admitted significant work lies ahead. What has FEMA accomplished up to this point so far?
I always hate trying to capture at this because there's still so much to do, and we're focused on that future. But as far as it's going, I think we've met the feeding need, the water need, the emergency shelter needs, and stabilized the healthcare system. I think we've got a fragile but stable situation right now.
In Canovanas, there have been cases of leptospirosis. What is FEMA's plan to prevent the waterborne illnesses from increasing?
We have a plan. We have a network of, we've restored the hospital network. We've restored the dialysis centers. The pharmacies are all open. They're able to do transactions. And we're aggressively pushing out to those areas where that's going on.
In the weeks after the storm, Donald Trump added explosive controversy to the federal response.
Now, I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack. We're going to help you out.
Thank you.
Have a good time.
The backlash among critics has remained fierce, the mayor of San Juan being one of the most vocal.
This administration does not want to listen to the truth and does not want to own up to it. The federal government's response to Puerto Rico's tragedy and humanitarian crises has been inadequate, has been insufficient, and plainly it has been a way for the Trump administration not to comply with their moral obligation to help the people of Puerto Rico. The situation is still a life or death situation.
President Trump fired back at repeated criticisms from Mayor Cruz. He even took a jab at Puerto Ricans themselves, saying they want everything done for them. It was clear that a politically charged information war was being waged, and post-Hurricane Puerto Rico was the battleground. In Utuado, a mountainous region in the island's interior, we arrive at a collapsed bridge. It's become a widely publicized symbol of both the desperation and the strength of local communities since the storm. Locals send donated supplies across the river in a shopping cart fixed to a makeshift zip line.
Una bolsa por familia. Incluye comida y artículos personales, navajas, camisas, gorras, audífonos. Tienen arroz, habichuelas, jamonilla, salchicha, salsa.
An entire neighborhood of elderly people live here. The everyday reality for them is that without the bridge, their community is cut off from the main road and they have no entrance or exit.
Sí que los amo, yo no los he olvidado, por eso que estaba aquí, para traerles, porque yo los amo. Soy maestra de esta comunidad, soy de esta comunidad, y yo los voy a seguir ayudando.
Those with family on the other side are overwhelmed at the sight of the bridge. Multiple groups pull up to deliver donations by hand. And what are you doing here today?
We saw last night on the news what was going on here, so this morning we went down and bought as much food as we could fit in the car, water, ice, and just came, because we know that the United States government isn't doing anything, so the people here in the island have to take care of themselves.
We met Paul Santiago at the bridge, who initially came to Puerto Rico to help family members and stayed when he noticed a lack of response from federal and local authorities.
They could put a bridge here overnight. It's hard to understand, and I was the first 11 years of my life, 8 of the first 11 years I lived here. Coming back to this, it's heart-wrenching. I've been here since October 4th. I have not seen a single person for FEMA. Not in Naranjito, Corozal, Barranquita.
Yo entiendo que hay caminos que los camiones de Fema no pueden entrar. Pero hay otra forma de pasarlo. Aquí no hay forma de pasar un camión en ese puente, pero se está pasando comida, se está pasando agua, hielo. Sí. Uno ve en las noticias, FEMA está aquí, FEMA está acá, FEMA está allá, pero tú no lo ves. Así que, ¿dónde está?
Right now we're crossing over from one side of this river to the other, and we're taking advantage of the fact that it's a dry day, that there's no rain, because when it rains, there's absolutely no access to the other side. We met Marilyn Luciano Soto, a community leader for this neighborhood. Has FEMA come and help you guys?
Well,
has FEMA actually come and tried to remedy this situation? I mean, it's been 35 days and you guys still have no way.
I received here Army, Navy, U.S. Air Force, all the militaries, and some of them, like 2 days ago, some Lucy Sterner, I think she works for FEMA, and they came to bring us some water and some MREs. I appreciate, and so does my community appreciate everything that they bring me. But sometimes I think it's a waste.
What do you want people to know about what you guys are going through 35 days later? What's the hardest part, and what do you need the most?
The most urgent thing is a bridge, because that's our only way to the rest of the world.
So why has there been no action?
That's what I asked myself.
One thing became clear. There was a disconnect between the efforts FEMA and the local authorities claimed they were making and the people who were most in need. As we prepared to leave Utuado, 2 officers in uniform arrived. They were from the Army Corps of Engineers, and despite a clear aversion to our cameras, they were happy to carry on a casual conversation. Our cameraman captured some audio of what they had to say about the bridge.
I got a PhD in civil engineering. This is a piece of cake. This is a no-brainer.
They explained that a Bailey bridge, a type of temporary bridge, could be erected in 3 hours.
You got well-meaning people that have no experience in charge, and they can't make a decision.
Back at FEMA headquarters, I asked about the engineers' thoughts on the Bailey Bridge. If it takes 3 hours to install, wouldn't that really alleviate the suffering of those 24 people?
I think there are multiple ways to take care of people, and that's not the only bridge we have down. We literally have 4 or 5 dozen bridges that have been severely impacted, and we have roads that are washed out, and we have roads that are still at risk of collapsing. In Utuado, the highway going through Utuado is one of them. But I would tell you, half a mile away from there is one of our, what we call our RSAs, our supply areas, and there is literally, thousands of liters of waters and thousands of meals right there, and it's really not that far and that hard to get it to those families. And we also have to prioritize, We want to take care of everybody, that's our goal, but it's going to take time.
That same day, San Juan Mayor Yulín Cruz traveled to Washington, D.C. to testify in front of Congress.
When I got off the plane in Washington, D.C., we found out that the hearing had been canceled with no apparent reason. I think it's an attempt to silence the voices that I represent, because it isn't my voice that's important. It's the voices that are represented by me and the plight of the people of Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico, it is still life or death for many. President Trump boasted of the death toll remaining at 16, but that number is widely disputed. Puerto Rican media reports that since Maria, 911 bodies had been cremated without proper autopsies. Many may be storm-related, and a CNN investigation finds the death toll is well into the hundreds.
It's not that President Trump does not get it, is that he doesn't want to get it. And that contrasts very sharply with the more than 500 volunteers that we've had in San Juan that have left their homes, taken vacation, and come with open hearts to help the people of San Juan and more than 34 communities outside of San Juan.
Hey, this is Ahmed. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to AJ Plus for more on Puerto Rico, as well as more documentaries like this. And don't forget to check out the rest of the series where we investigate the long-term recovery efforts on the island, as well as meet people who are fleeing to the mainland.